Okay, welcome everybody to our November 13th meeting of the Charter Revision Commission. We are meeting fully remote this evening, and we'll start off with our roll call. I know we don't have Rick McQuaid with us this evening, but I'll just go through the list. I don't know what order everybody else is seeing it. Tyler Fairbairn, I'm obviously here. We have Carl,
Here.
Jim Clark,
Here.
John Levin,
Here.
Doug Hempstead.
Here. Here.
Tanya Rhodes Small and Ed Camacho.
Tanya and Ed just turned his mic on. Tanya, your
Yeah.
mic's still off.
So we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're just missing. It looks like we're missing Joe. We know we're not going to have Rick with us this evening. So, do we have a motion to accept the minutes of our October 29th, 2024 meeting?
So moved.
Corrections.
Okay. Doug moved. John, you have corrections for the minutes?
Yes.
Corrections.
Yeah, please let us know.
Okay. Looking at not sure how to identify the passages. In any case, I wish to correct the spelling of Elsa Obachowski's name. Her last name is Obuchowski.
Okay.
And may it be spelled correctly forever into the future.
Okay.
I also wish to correct Mr. Fred Wilms's comments in the public hearing. There's a reference to physical guardrails that kept the state solvent. I would love to actually see those physical guardrails. I'm pretty sure Mr. Wilms was referring to fiscal guardrails, which are different. That should be fiscal.
Good catch there, John.
Also, the page where Mr. Levin asked if there were any municipalities that were able to have term limits. I would like to add that Mr. Mednick responded that he was aware of 2, and those are Wilton and Bristol, and that there may be others, but he was not aware of any cities or towns that had term limits as a result of special acts by the legislature.
Okay.
And then last, there was a reference, the comments of Mr. Carnavari said that there should be more, it should be interaction with committee common council members, not interactive with.
Okay.
So yes, these minutes are being read.
Right. Did anybody else have questions, comments, suggested revisions to the minutes from 10/29? No. Okay. So, I mean, do we need a new motion to
Yes.
approve John's corrections to the minutes?
Yes, I'll move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, John. Thank you for your attention to those details. It's greatly appreciated. Okay, our next item up is the public participation portion. I'm going to check quickly here and see if we have any attendees here who might want to participate. I see we have 3. If any of the 3 folks who are joining us online are interested in offering comments or speaking before the commission, could you please raise your hand? Raise your Zoom hand and I will call you up here. Otherwise, we will move on. I don't see any of the panelists looking to participate right now, which then leads us to old business. Do we have any old business that we wanted to get back into before we get into our new business? No, I think, well, I suppose it's new business. I mean, well, no, I mean, the schedule is old business. So I know we had sent an email about it, but are we good with the remaining dates for 2024 that we have on the calendar? So we have our next meeting, and I will double check this with Esther. I know there was work going on in the chambers, which is why we're not there this evening. I think they're doing some IT upgrades. I will confirm the room that we will be meeting in on the 19th. That's our meeting with our elected officials to discuss the possible revisions moving forward. And then we have after that December 3rd at 6:30 and December 17th at 6:30. I don't know if we want to discuss and Steve, you feel free to chime in as well if we want to discuss dates after the new year. I know we had some things mapped out, but we'll certainly want to be sure that we confirm that and everybody is on the same page there. But as long as we have all those ones, we'll be good to go. I will make sure that we have all the agendas and the rooms lined up. Doug?
I think it's appropriate, and we have to either vote at a December meeting because we're created through next year. We're not one of those taking office January 1st. So before our last meeting in December, we need to vote on the 2025 agenda.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, all right, just so we're,
Yes, that's a good plan, Steve.
Agenda.
I think Carl has his hand up, so I'll defer
I
to.
think he means
Oh.
the meeting schedule.
It was the same question Doug had.
no, we have to.
Yeah, I was going to just reinforce it. I have laid out for my purposes, for my own scheduling, since I'm balancing several municipalities. I'll send all the dates in just following the same time frame that we have now for 2025, so you can act on it in December, but give you plenty of time to think about it.
That's great. Okay, so yeah, we don't have to sort that all out tonight, but
You
Doug,
don't have to
thank
sort
you.
that out tonight. I've got it laid out. I'll just send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be
hopefully
great.
next
Doug,
week.
thank you for the reminder. We'll take that up at one of our December meetings once everyone's had a chance to look at Steve's schedule and can kind of cross it with their own, and then we'll do our formal vote at one of our December meetings. John, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you? Okay. Well, if there's no other old business, that takes us to new business. Is there anything? I'm sorry. Anything that anybody wanted to bring up as far as future meetings, process, items to address, methods of communication and outreach, and now this was the meeting to kind of go over any of those concerns before we meet with the elected officials. Any kind of nuts and bolts stuff. This evening was when we were going to do that.
I have a comment about that.
Sure, Jim.
I'm thinking as I'm kind of going through the charter, because I'm new to the commission, and kind of highlighting things as I go. And then when I get through it, I was thinking that probably I would send my notes maybe to you as the chair, and then you could forward them, so we don't have to necessarily take time during a meeting. That all those issues can be looked at by maybe Mr. Mednick, and then anything that's needs to be discussed, then we could do that in a meeting. How's that for process? I'm not sure if that's what you would like or would approve of, but appreciate your feedback on that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Jim. I mean, I think that's a reasonable way to look at some of those things. I know John and I had emailed back and forth, and there was some questions he had that we were able to address at a meeting. There were some other questions that we thought maybe might not have been the best use of Steve's time to be researching. So we kind of turned John loose on Google on his own for maybe some of those things. But I'd be more than happy to do that. If you have anything that you want to send me directly, I can look at it and maybe check with Steve or just circulate immediately to the rest of the group.
Yeah, as you see fit. Sure.
Yeah, that works. Doug?
I got my little yellow hand up, but that's okay. Go ahead, Doug, if you're ready.
Oh, sorry, Carl.
Doug's mic is muted. So he's
Doug's muted. Perhaps that means he's deferring to you, Carl.
My comment was, I know, John, and your mic is muted, so you might want to unmute to answer. Before we started this process, I know that John had several things on his mind, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you wanted to try to accomplish or talk about in these meetings. You don't need to go into chapter and verse tonight, but I was just wondering if you could give us a top line of what's on your mind that you would like to see if we could do or not do, or that sort of thing. Is that okay with you? Yes.
Sure, absolutely fine. And I hope that every other member of the commission gets the same opportunity to share their top line thoughts. But mine is, again, I'm new to this charter revision commission process. I know we have some veterans like yourself, Carl. But, you know, I think based on the directions that we got from Steve Mednick already, you know, the charter has the job of serving the community of Norwalk. And if there are ways to improve it, to improve democracy in Norwalk, and ways to improve government or government structure, then that's what I would be anxious to accomplish.
Yeah, and John, one thing that I'm just going to make a note, because I know you and I had talked about this. I will check with Esther. I know, Steve, I'm almost certain we did this with the last commission. Was by the end of it, hadn't we taken all of the comments that we'd received from the public and we put it all in one place?
Yes.
What I was going to say at the end of this meeting, but I'll say it now if you'd like. I haven't yet put together the grid. I try to keep track of all the public comments that come to you. You will have it for your next meeting, although maybe you'll have it after the next meeting because the elected officials' comments should be included as well. And so my hope would be that the meeting thereafter, we would sit down, look at the comments from the public, see what the people had to say, what the mayor has to say, the leadership has to say, and then we can start scheduling subject matter related meetings and start giving you backgrounders on each of those meetings based on what the public testimony is. The public testimony from a statutory point of view is supposed to be the trigger mechanism to let you know what the public wants.
Yep.
And then combined with that, the leadership meeting is connected to that as well. So after the leadership meeting next week, a matrix or grid, whatever you want to call it, and I will do it. I'll do it on a chapter basis. I'll try to align it with the chapters that each of the items relates to. Doesn't mean you're limited to those items, but that'll at least give you a sense at the beginning of this process of what it is that you need to tackle, and we could start laying out not only dates for meetings, but subject matters that we're going to discuss at those meetings.
That's incredibly helpful. I thank you for that, Stephen. And I think, you know, with the comments from the last time, I don't know that we need to dig back into those and try to revive things that were brought up a year ago. But I think it's helpful to have it as a point of reference, and certainly as a, you know, a benchmark to see what are people, you know, concerned with the same things this time as perhaps they were last time. So I think it would be good to have both. I know we had that document last time. Whether maybe it's just we can add a link or we can circulate.
I'll get you last year's model. Remember, we focused solely on, so there may be a lot of substantive things in there that we didn't address because we were just dealing with restructuring the document.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. And I think if, you know, it's helpful to just look at it as, you know, and we've got a number of comments so far, and I'm sure we'll get more, but, you know, are the same things coming up both times around. And I think that can be informative as we set up the topic specific meetings. Carl, I've left you hanging there.
That's okay, but Joe had her hand up first, so go ahead. And then
Oh, Joe, sorry.
Oh, sorry to leave you hanging there, Carl.
no problem.
It was, you know, just simply the comment that, you know, if it would be great to have almost like a curriculum. I feel like hopefully we are all reading the charter, but I kind of feel like I'm reading it and, you know, trying to digest it, but I don't know, you know, in underscoring points, you know, ideas that I have, but knowing where to go forward in terms of, you know, thoughtful, you know, recommendations and questions and so forth. So kind of, if it could even, when we were all in school, you know, you would have, you know, in different, you know, quarters of the year, you would focus on different things. So if we could have an idea of where in each stage we would be focusing. If that makes any sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, and I think we did a lot of that last time, and I think we'll be able to do that this time. Particularly after we've met with the elected officials, I think they'll probably have some specific recommendations, and we can bring those in with what we've received from the public so far, and then I think that'll inform Joe our future meetings, and I think it'll be great to, you know, when we meet on whatever, January 15th or whatever the date happens to be, we'll know we're looking at this particular topic or chapter of the charter, and then go from there.
Kind of what I was saying earlier, your curriculum vitae will come out of the meeting after the meeting with leadership. Maybe one of the things, I'll talk to Tyler about this. We have done historically red line sessions. I usually do red line sessions, bring the Corp Counsel's office in. I will talk to the Corp Counsel and see if they're available at our next meeting. There may not be a lot of redlining because it's a new document, and so they may not have a lot of experience with potholes in the document. I have at least two that I'll bring up, but maybe what we should do at the next meeting at the end of the session is go chapter by chapter through the current document so that I can give my reflections on what I think is in there. And if I have somebody from Corp Counsel to join me, then maybe we can point out a few things there. And between the leadership points and those points, I think at the following meeting with the matrix, we should be able to lay out a pretty good preliminary schedule to get us through December and January, because there will be some big issues, and I'll need lead time. As the three returning members know, one of the things we do is we have a series of seminars, for lack of a better term, where we bring in panels of communities that have similar experiences and that have done things in different ways, so that you get to see what a city council looks like in another city and all that kind of stuff. So my hope is that, again, at the meeting after the 19th, we will start laying out an agenda, and then you'll see a schedule that has actual subject matter. So that will be your curriculum as we work through the charter.
Yeah, and I thought when we did it last time, Stephen, when we went through chapter by chapter, I thought that was an incredibly helpful way to do it. And I know, before we started the last time around, I mean, one of the things I did, and it's certainly easier to do now, but I took, a printed copy of the existing one and just kind of went through chapter by chapter and said, here are the things that jump out at me as points to be addressed. So, again, I think it's easier now because it's cleaner and makes sense, and you're not jumping from section to section trying to match things up. So to the extent that people have the time or are interested in doing that, I mean, it might be helpful if we know we're looking at, a certain section or chapter, just to go through it on your own, make any notes of things you want to see changed, and then we can, we'll discuss it when we go through that part of it.
And if I may just amplify, I'm really thrilled that Commissioner Clark is going to be giving us some markups on things. If everybody else can do the same thing, that would be useful, and we could throw those into the grid as well. Very often you'll see in one of my communities, I have a number of commissioner comments, and they just fall right in there with the members of the public. So any observations are helpful. I'm not trying to put pressure on you, but if you could provide those observations, they'll end up in the grid. And if they're not in the grid in 2 weeks, they could be there in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So don't feel any pressure, but to the extent that you guys can do that, that would be very helpful.
Okay. Doug, you have your Zoom hand up. Carl's got his actual hand up. Are you hand up intentionally, Doug?
Yes, it is. I
All
just
right.
I yield, how to say, I yield my time to Carl before.
Oh, you
Wow.
don't have to, but that's appreciated.
I got a comment, and a question. So I'll do with the question first. The format for next week when we're meeting with the council, is it a back and forth kind of discussion of what they bring forward? They just formally, because I guess that constitutes a council, a meeting of the council officially if they're all coming. I don't know if they're all coming or not. No?
I think it's just
Steve,
I think it's just the leadership. So they'll be
Okay.
before you. They'll be testifying in front of you, and it'll be up to you. You're the vice chair and the chair. Whether you want to have back and forth. I think in the case of having council leadership there and the mayor there,
Right.
back and forth discussion might be useful.
I agree.
Okay, that's Tyler. I mean, I think that's good because you get to get clarification on maybe some things they're asking versus here's our list. Have a nice day. kind
I
of deal, which
completely
is
agree.
okay to do,
Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
just. Okay, so I thought you kind of wanted items that we were interested in maybe looking at tonight. Are you asking us to hold off on that instead or no?
No, I mean, by all means, Doug.
Okay, and I
No.
can send in a Word document then. I had 4 at this stage of the game. And that's without going in and starting to redline the charter. One that's already been talked about, it's council, one I talked about a little, council representation. So I'm asking if we can't get the date and time the council added its additional seats. I don't know what year that was, in the 50s or 40s. How many seats were added and the districts they represent? Do they do at large? Do they create a new district? I don't know. I wasn't alive then. And what was the population in Nowak at the time of the change? I'll send this around on a Word if you want it, Tyler. And just asking, is there any kind of rule of thumb standard that they use for representations, either in RTMs, councils, for elected representatives? Because I think Stanford has quite a few, like 30 some odd, if I remember right.
40.
Even 40, and Westport has a more massive RTM, if I remember right, for a small community. So I just tried to take a look at that so we understanding maybe that, now I want to hear what the council.
If I may say, Ed Camacho asked for that. I think Ed asked for that information at the last, Commissioner Camacho
Okay.
at the last meeting. I will get you that. It's easy enough to get, but I thought we'd wait until we got to that subject matter.
Okay.
But very, very simply though, Mr. Vice Chair, there is no rule of thumb. It's all historic, how you developed. Greenwich has 235. New Canaan or Darien has 100. Westport has a big number. Fairfield County, most of your cities, and we can talk about this at a later point, are really set up as small towns. Most of the cities, starting from Fairfield to Greenwich, have structures that look like town meeting, Board of Selectmen structures. And so it's very unusual when you go to the other cities, starting with Bridgeport and Danbury, Waterbury, New Haven, Hartford, New Britain, Bristol. You have very different models that are more city-oriented models. We have mayors and councils. In some communities, you have like West Hartford, a city manager, town manager. But Fairfield County is very unique in the fact that they have grown in population, but kind of retained old New England government structures with more representation. You're one of the towns that has representation that's more closely aligned with the other big cities. So that's just a general answer to your broad question about rules of thumb. But there is no formulaic approach to this. I will tell you that.
Thank you. And it's Doug. You don't have to be formal with me. And Ed, great minds think
I'm
alike.
just trying to be
Yes, we do.
respectful of the public meeting. Don't worry. Thank you though.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug.
The other, I had 4, I just wrote quickly. One was, I know it was a subject of discussion, past charter changes, the council compensation that's in the charter. I would just like, me personally, just take it out. Take that language out of there. We should, done. If the council wants to pay itself, they can do it through the ordinance,
if I can say, yeah, and that's a perfectly fair approach, but under state law, they have got to go for a referendum to get their salaries approved, which is bizarre and unique. And one of the reasons we put salaries in charters with escalators, and I'm not advocating for this. We've done it in other cities where you have an escalator clause, is because the public approved the escalator clause in a referendum. They don't have to go back as they have a cost of living increase with inflation. But if you are silent, as you're recommending, which is a perfectly appropriate approach, under state law, they would have to go, if they put money in the budget, that portion of the budget would have to be approved by referendum.
However, I just know from
Well,
being there,
yeah.
It's been a salary for the last 60 years of $50 a month. So it's not worth the effort accounting wise. There's somebody, it's $46.35 take home pay. And the checks probably cost more than that to generate. So I just thought it'd be.
No, I just wanted to let you know that that can be done, and there's a process for doing it if they want to deal with their salaries.
But they've tried to change the amount twice and it's failed twice. So.
Yep.
We did talk about minority representation. I'm just repeating other people, but I think it should be, it's one of my focuses too. And I'm not sure whether it's a charter issue or an ordinance issue. The redevelopment agency doesn't appear anywhere.
Okay.
In the charter or in the ordinance. I was told years ago that there's a piece of paper because it was through a state statute that was a federal statute the state adopted. And the original, it's created a redevelopment agency with 5 good men. And that was the creation of the redevelopment agency sometime in the 50s. So I don't know if it needs to go in the charter, or I don't know, because it seems like they moved some of the departments now into the charter, the newer ones. So it might be something that we look at.
Right.
Do you have an active redevelopment agency in
Yes.
Norwalk?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they run a housing program and all that. Yes.
They run all the CDBG home
That-
stuff.
And
I'm
they have a
wondering if Ed, do you-
Milwaukee housing.
I'm wondering
program
if
too.
Ed has any insight on that from recent BET work. Is it-
No, I don't. But that's a really good question. I wasn't aware that they were not a creation of the charter or state law in some way.
It was.
Yeah, it
always,
was, but it's funny, you go in the charter and look for, how they're appointed, even though you go to their website, they're appointed by the mayor, approved by the council. But every search I've ever done, I could never find them in either the ordinance or in the charter anywhere.
So they're not in the ordinances even?
You could do a search, maybe more
Or-
finite than I have.
They-
I've been through this
Yeah.
before, so.
Maybe Corporation Council knows the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I'll try
Yeah.
to talk to Mario.
Yeah,
about that.
I'd be interested to know that as well.
Yeah,
I'm
because
thinking-
let me just talk about departments for one second. If you don't,
Go ahead.
Kyle, is it okay if I just do the color
Well,
commentary?
I only had
occasionally?
I only had one
Yeah.
other question and I'm done.
Right.
Were there any items from the last charter revision? Because you got a different council now that were discussed, but kind of put off to the side, figuring let's get the rehab of the existing document done. Had a lengthy discussion and probably is worthy of discussion again. So,
The biggest
that list.
issue, and I'll let Carl and the others who were there before, tonight it's just Tyler and Carl, was the term of office. They came very close to including the term of office modification in the proposal. It was debated very carefully and very closely, and the judgment call was made to avoid political fracas. We should avoid term modifications. So I'd say that is a fairly major issue that was left over. And the expectation was that the 2-year charter commission, the commission in 2 years right now, would try to grapple with that and other political issues. I'll defer to the 2 members. I can't think of anything of a major.
Well, didn't we talk about the taxing districts also? Wasn't that another issue that kind of came up?
Yeah, but
We talked about for a
but-
long time.
Yeah, but and thank you, Carl. The taxing districts were discussed, but what we discovered during the interim, they brought me in to work with the council during this interim period, and we had a series of workshops and meetings on a variety of issues. I'm sure the leadership will talk about it when they come here. And the first one we had was the taxing districts. And what we discovered in that process is that the taxing districts have their own charter revision process. And so what we've said to the taxing districts is, and it also came up recently, they just approved reapportionment last night, which was an issue that the Charter Commission actually did grapple with and did include, because you've never done a redistricting since Baker versus Carr was decided in 1962, but last night you just completed it, so you have new districts in Norwalk. We discovered that they do their own charter revisions. And one of the biggest conflicts in the redistricting process was there was an insistence by the taxing districts to make sure they were maintained whole within the various council districts. But it came into conflict with the one person, one vote standard and the utilization of census data, census tracts for the creation of equal districts. They're relatively equal in size. And so what we said to the taxing districts is, you need to go to Hartford. They can't even do this by charter revision. They've got to go to Hartford and update their district lines. And it can only be done unless the legislature has some general enactment that allows them to do it. And right now, no one's talked about that. Their only recourse would be go to Hartford right now or in January and realign their districts, because they have districts that were created before certain roads were here in the town, before homes were built. They have districts that go right between homes. You can go right from your living room to your dining room and be in two different districts. So they need to fix their districts. That's not something we can do. One of the leaders, and I talked about this just about an hour and a half ago, ironically, and was wondering whether it was appropriate for the Charter Commission to be a convener and try to spur the taxing districts to do this. But that's what they need to do. They need to do something with the General Assembly. They need to hire a cartographer, somebody to help them look at their districts and create 21st century districts for the taxing districts. But that's not something we thought we could. I thought we could, because it was included in the charter. But when one of their attorneys at the very first meeting brought this to my attention, I said, well, thank goodness for little things, so we don't have to worry about that. That's their problem. They're going to have to focus on that. Thank you, Carl, for bringing it up. It's just conversation we just had about an hour ago.
Yeah, that is, Carl. I think that was the only, other than the term limits, I don't know that we left a lot of other big items on the table. I think we spent so much time, trying to get the document itself patched together correctly, that I think those were the only big ones that we kind of left unturned.
We do have, and I would bring this up next week, at the back of the document, if you look at the document, forget about the taxing districts, there's other special sections of the document. There were some old provisions that we didn't quite know what to do with. And so we segregated them and put them into a chapter on historical provisions of the charter. And one of the things I might recommend that we do, and maybe we look at it early, give me the assignment, and I will sit down with the court counsel's office and with the department heads and run these sections by everybody and say, do we use them or not? And if we do, let's put them back into the charter. If we do not, let's just repeal them.
Mm-hmm.
So we did on things that we couldn't make final decisions on, we threw them in the historical charter provision section at the back of the document. So you all might want to look at those as well.
Steve, were those the same as that? Weren't there some sunset things that we had to do? I mean, were there things?
Yeah,
that
we
have
do
to
have
actually
sunset.
come out of the next one? Was that part of the deal, or was it just that they were in that one with the provision that, 2 years from now, these will no longer be in effect? Or do we have to actually, when we update it again, take those things
Yeah,
out?
well, let me tell you, we should have done more on this and we didn't. So I have it right in front of me. We have the historical provisions, the Norwalk Harbor, street, sidewalk, and building lines, pensions for certain retired employees. I think it's one person.
One person.
And I think
yeah.
we're trying to get the city to determine, are there any ears, legates, anybody who is still entitled to something? And if they're not, this provision should go away. So hopefully we'll get that done. Then there's an assessment appeals provision that we want to make sure aligns with other provisions. But Tyler's absolutely correct. We have the historical council districts; those will go away now because we now have the new provisions. There were several provisions, and we will talk to the departments about this regarding to the finance division, the controller, purchasing agent, tax collector, and public works and operations functions. I will make sure, or I will talk to Corp Counsel and to the chief of staff to make sure that we know what they're doing, whether it's going to need an ordinance or a minor ordinance that basically says we don't need these provisions, or if they tell us we don't need these provisions, all these things will come out. The hope would be that Articles 13 and 14 would be done, eliminated by the end of this charter process. Some of them are transition, and some of them are the old historical provisions. It's and that's how we set that up. So we'll look at those. I hope that made sense.
Absolutely. Jim?
Yeah, I want to just go back for a minute about the public comments. So we know that in minutes and meeting minutes and such, often the public comments get truncated, sometimes so much so that some of the important detail is lost. And so for the public comments that are coming to this commission, are we going to have, are we able to capture the breadth of the comments? For example, the comments last week from Tanner, we asked them to email those in, and it's just a very much kind of a one-line thing. I think a lot of the detail was lost from his comment, for example, and I just want to make sure that our process is such that the public comments really are given to us in such a way that we really can understand what the public was asking, and that we have that clarity so we can take all those things fully into account.
I recall last time anybody who submitted a written comment, whether it was an email or an attachment, we got the entire thing. John, I know you submitted a sizable comment, and that it was not in a bad way by any means, but it was circulated in full among the committee. I mean, we saw your entire thing. It's a good question, Jim. I'm not entirely sure how the ones that are offered in person or over the internet are being, I mean, I don't know if they're being translated exactly or if they're just being summarized, but I can check.
Well, I hope staff gets them to me. What I try to do, Jim, is I'll call everybody by their first name now. So
Please.
what I try to do is I try to provide a fairly accurate summary. I have not seen any written. I didn't realize there were any written comments. No one's gotten them to me. So when I get the written comments, I put them into the grid. And if there's 5 elements of it, I put the 5 elements in. If there are extraneous details, I may leave them out, but my assumption is that you have them. If I've got them, everybody on the commission should have them. And so
Not
the
necessarily.
intent of,
I think
well, it should. They should.
My concern probably is not so much for the written comments, but for spoken comments in public meetings, that we don't lose and don't rely just on the minutes that we receive, because
Okay.
they aren't, in my opinion, and this is for many years, often some of the important detail can get lost. Has that been your experience, other members of
No,
this?
I think we should recommend that that people that are making public comments submit their comments in writing as well, so that what they say is not subject to our interpretation or someone else's interpretation, but at least in like bullet points or some way, whatever's easiest for them, so that we don't have to rely on our interpretation of the spoken word completely.
And the other thing I do, Jim and Ed, is I attribute the comments to the member of the public who made them. And so I would invite, and I have no fear of being corrected because it's not my record, it's your record. If, I would encourage any member of the public, if I have very detailed notes. They don't end up in your minutes. So between the minutes and my notes, I hope that my grid will give you a pretty good sense of what the member of the public wanted. But I would also encourage people, and the chair can probably say this at every meeting before public participation, that these comments will be incorporated in the grid, which is a public document. Please look at it. If we have not reflected your position well, let us know. So there's no intent to summarize somebody out of relevance. My objective is to make sure that you have the relevant points. I'm not going to probably make every debate point they make, otherwise it's no longer a grid. It's it's a treatise.
Yeah.
And so we want to try to keep it as summarized as possible so that the public sees it, you see it, and then we can go for more details. And if it's something that's really important, invite the person back. If they had something that we missed and something that would be constructive, they can certainly come back.
Or
Yeah,
reminding people that I think the minutes are online, right?
The minutes are online. So I mean, between we have the minutes, we have Steve's grid. Whenever we've had public comment, I've taken my own notes, and as somebody who's been on both sides, as somebody who's been
Sure.
accepting public comments on a commission, as somebody who's made comments before boards and commissions and the council, whatever. I always think it's helpful for people to email them in as well. I don't want to have that be because we're not listening when they speak, but I mean, to Steve's point, I think it's clear when you have something in front of you in writing. And I do think, I mean, we don't want to edit anybody out, but I think for people who are submitting comment, and we encourage people to do it by email through the website, I think it is good to be as concise as possible. I don't know how helpful a 5-page kind of brain dump is on an issue that's important to somebody with all examples. It's kind of, here's my point and here's what I'd like you to address, and here's maybe the relevant section of the charter. But I would encourage the same. I think we'd love to hear from people in person, but if people want to follow up with an email, I think that is absolutely the best way, because then there's no lost in translation. We have your point right in front of us in your own words.
Well, that's why I brought up about being online. We might want to just remind people that if you testify in person, that you can go online and check the minutes just to make sure that what you stated or your intent when you
Absolutely.
were there was recorded correctly.
Absolutely, and we're happy to update it and correct it as needed. We won't be offended if we're told our minutes didn't capture someone's testimony correctly.
Right. I just have one comment. And I'm not trying to rain anybody's parade or dump on them, but I've been down this road. When we talked about if you have a thought or you have an idea that comes to mind about the charter, we were talking a little bit ago about sending what that thought was to the chair, and the chair takes a look at it, and then the chair can send it back out to us or whatever. I discourage us doing that. I think any thoughts or ideas that people have regards to charter should be made in these open meetings, online, in public, for the public record, and left that way, so that there is no thought or ambiguities by the public that something may have taken place behind whatever. And I will tell you that from being FOIA'd, if you get into that, you're gonna have to find all those emails and produce them. So it's I just discourage. I mean, don't want to put any more work on Tyler, but it is a public meeting, public forum. We invite people to listen in. And I just think, if I want to know what's on John's mind, I want to hear John say it in this meeting. And I don't want to have it mentioned by somebody else or sent back out to this group through email that John would like to go down this direction. I'd like him as commissioner to say, this is something I think we should talk about. Therefore, it's part of the public record.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I mean, if there are like procedural questions, or if there's something that somebody wants to distribute, I'm happy to do it. I think maybe that's, and I don't know exactly what Jim's intention was, but maybe just so we're not having a reply all on every kind of thought that crosses someone's mind about something charter related. If it's something that relates to the process and what's the best way to disseminate this information, I'm happy to have it flow through me. But yes, I mean, sort of, I don't. To be honest, Carl, I don't really. I have no desire to conduct any council or any commission business by email, or to have me be the point of contact there. It's
Correct,
I
correct.
don't want to do it. So
Yeah, well,
this is the
procedural,
forum
like,
for it, but if there's procedural stuff or things that need to get distributed to the group,
like for this meeting, we had a bunch of emails fly back and forth, which is fine.
sure,
Because
absolutely,
that was talking about, the meeting time and so on and so forth.
right.
But if, I had an idea that I think we should add to the charter, that, we need to add whatever that might be, that should be done in this meeting, not in an email to anybody else. And then
Sure.
brought up via email.
Sure.
Jim, to your question too, all our meetings are nowadays recorded. So there is a verbatim, all right? They do post our meetings. It does show up, I guess, on the channel, the government, our local government channel. So if we need a verbatim too, we could always go back and watch what meeting that individual spoke, so.
Yeah, all the city does a very good job of getting these things up there. I mean, there's a YouTube link for our past meetings. So if there's any question, it's all right there on the charter revision page.
Correct. Better than it used to be.
I have a question or maybe a comment on Carl's request. So it was made clear to us, none of us should be conducting commission business except in a commission meeting. But at the same time, I have so much that I need to learn about city government and this charter and this process. I talk to people that I think are informed and smart, and I wish I did more of it, but I talk to people and I'll share my ideas, which I'm hoping I can develop to the point where I will feel comfortable bringing them in front of the commission. But
I would say that's
this-
fine, John. That's not really discussing commission business. That's discussing you with a better understanding.
Exactly, right. Which is really my point, that, I think, realistically, I think we should be able to, discuss ideas and thoughts that, and this is how I'm going to learn about what we need to do.
Yeah, there's a
And-
fine line, but yeah, you can do that, but you don't want to get 5 people together and start talking about something that was discussed. And even 2 or 3 is not a good idea. But anyway,
I will count carefully. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Just to be-
I mean, John, I also do think, if somebody has a question about the process or something they would maybe like to know about charter revision or the charter or city government in general, and you don't want to wait 2 weeks for the next meeting. I mean, I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask some questions and get it, if you have a question for Steve, send it to me, I'll pass it along. Give a question for another commission member. I think that's okay to have. I mean, we don't want to
that's true.
make it any harder on ourselves.
Good.
That's education. That's not talking about the business.
Oh, absolutely. I'm with you on that, Carl.
So I also had a couple of requests or questions. I know with the last charter revision effort, the commission had set up a portal on the commission website to solicit written comments or ideas from the public.
Yep.
Is that going to be put in place for this round? I would like to see it put in place. So that's really a request for something that I think we don't have yet. Is that correct?
Not entirely. So what we did last time was similar to what we have this time. So if you go on the charter revision page of the city website, there's a link, and you can email any comments, questions you have And then that all goes to a city staff member. It's aggregated, and then it gets sent to us. And we can discuss how often that happens. I mean, I think it should probably be happening at least weekly. Those things are being sent to Steve so that he can add them to his grid. But that's essentially what we did last time. I mean, it wasn't like a message board kind of thing. It was like
Mhm.
you
Right.
go to the charter page, you have input, here's a link to do so. And then towards the end of the process, I think we published it all in one place. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. I'd like to, take a look at that in connection to what we're doing this time and see if there's any overlap in issues that people have brought up. But it's essentially the same process. It's you at anyone at any time can submit input on the process through the website, and then we get it and put it together.
Okay, I was unaware and I looked for it and couldn't find it, but I will look again with greater determination and I will find it.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
I mean the page that has all of our names and then the links to the meetings and the agendas and stuff. There's a piece in there.
Okay. Also, I know there were submissions that were given to the last commission. I was one of them. And I would actually like to be able to see what was submitted to the last commission. I'm guessing some portion of it was incorporated in the last charter revision, and some portion was probably not. I would like to see what the comments were from the last go around.
Yeah, that's what we just talked about. So we'll get that, make that available.
Okay. And then also, I am wondering if Steve Mednick would be willing to provide a primer for us on the Connecticut Home Rule Act. I know we had a lengthy discussion of at our first meeting of Connecticut as a Dillon's Rule state. And I thought that was illuminating. But there is an additional legislation that Connecticut provided, and I would love to get a better understanding of what that does and what it's about and how it may or may not impact us. Is that practical?
Was my PowerPoint distributed to everybody?
No,
Yes.
Yes.
I
I
thought it
didn't get it.
was.
Yeah, so I'm not
I
sure
didn't
what else you'd want from me. I mean, that has the Municipal Powers Act in it. I don't know what else you'd be looking for. There would be a primer beyond that.
Okay, fair. Then I will revisit.
If you have specific questions, I'd be happy to do it, but that is actually designed to tell you exactly what the Home Rule Act permits us to do. So if it-
Sadly, I'm not well informed enough to even have a specific question. But I know that when you made the presentation with the PowerPoint initially, there were some portions of it that were skipped over because of time constraints. And I will revisit the PowerPoint, find out if there's any questions that that I need to revisit or don't have an understanding of. But
Yeah, the only things that I did not discuss in the meeting, because it really is not relevant to Norwalk, there's a whole series of home rule, well, not home rule really, what we call the default statutes. There's a whole series of default statutes in Title VII that are very confusing, and some municipalities actually use them, but if you have a charter, you don't need them. And so there's a whole lot of things in Title VII that say this is how you do a Board of Finance, this is how you do a Board of Assessment Appeals, or whatever they may be. You don't need that because under your charter, you can create those entities any way you want. Title 11 has how you set up a Board of Library Commissioners. Well, you don't need that because you have a Home Rule Act. So I didn't discuss all that stuff because it's not really relevant. And so look at it, John, and if there's if there's questions that pop up, I'm sure Tyler will give you permission to give me a call. We can chat about it. But I'm not sure what I would do as a primer beyond what I've done for you. But if you have questions and they may trigger something that I've never thought about, so I don't want to pretend that I have all the answers. Then there might be something I've never thought about because I do it all the time and I missed it. So, raise the questions.
Is
Okay.
there something in there about how you create a redevelopment agency?
Well, no, the redevelopment, we'll talk about that because, you know, redevelopment agencies are basically statutory structures, and the state statutes work in different ways. And I've worked with redevelopment agencies, but they were all created when I was when President Kennedy was in office. You know, when I was in grammar school, and so some state statutes allow you to create a redevelopment agency, or some entities by resolution. And so if it's done by resolution, you'd have to go back and look at the minutes of the city council, the common council from 1962 to see whether that resolution was adopted. So when we look at that section, Doug, we will take a look at the redevelopment agency statutes and see what they require. If they require an ordinance and we don't have an ordinance on the books, oops, we'll have to figure that out.
Well, they were created by resolution. I can state that as a fact. I've been shown.
If they're
a copy
created by
of-
resolution, then you're gonna find a resolution somewhere in the minutes of the common council whenever it was created. And that's why you're not finding it in the charter. Yeah.
Ed knows too, though, resolutions aren't binding.
Well, no, but
No.
here's the,
I don't need to get into that. That's
No.
inside ball if you've served on the council. I don't need.
no,
to
no,
get
no,
into
but
that.
it is and it isn't. And I'd have to look at the charter. In some of my charters, and I do this for a reason, I have a definition called a statutory resolution. And we don't have that here because I wasn't aware of that, and we may end up creating that here. A
There you go.
statutory resolution is something like we just talked about, redevelopment. And the state may have no respect for local process, but it seems to me when you're creating an agency,
Yeah.
you need to treat it more seriously than naming a street corner after, you know, the Shah of Iran. You know, or Bishop Tutu, which I did in New Haven, for the record, Bishop Tutu, not the Shah of Iran. And but the and so I created something in charters called statutory resolutions, so that when you are doing something like that, the council should take it seriously and treat it as if it was an ordinance. Even though it's a mere resolution, you're only using the term resolution because the state says resolution. And so, you know, as I've said to you before, and John will look at it when he looks at the PowerPoint again, he'll remember this, that we are not a sovereign, we're a municipal corporation. And so when the state's telling us to pass a resolution, they think we're a corporation with a corporate board passing resolutions. So we'll look at that. We may end up come up with that definition. And then it's also up to you whether you want to have reference to them in your charter, or simply, I don't know, do something else with them. But it just seems very odd to me that a large government entity is not easily comprehensible. The member of the public, because it's in a resolution that was adopted in 1965 or something.
I have in good faith that John Levin will suddenly go research all this.
All right.
John, did you have anything else?
Yeah, so you know, there's a lot of history that precedes us. Obviously, there have been charter revisions over the years. You know, there was the original consolidating charter from 1913. There's tons and tons of history. I would like to have an understanding of what the last special acts were that were passed for the benefit of Norwalk. I know special acts are ways to get things done. You know, it's a heavy lift because it requires the legislature to do, you know, to pass it. But it's, you know, it is a path. And, you know, clearly Norwalk has taken this, you know, and other towns as well have taken this path in the past. I would like to know, you know, what are maybe the last 2 or 3 special acts that were passed for Norwalk's benefit, if that's practical.
Can I ask if that's how that relates to what we're doing here?
You know what? I'm not sure that it does, but it would be an example of Norwalk using the special act process to accomplish something that couldn't be accomplished in a different way. And this is really intended to expand our understanding and our repertoire, and frankly, the history of, how Norwalk has governed itself. And that's why I find it relevant.
But it's not relevant to what the purpose of the Charter Commission is.
Not
But I have an
necessarily.
answer for you. I have an
Let's-
answer that will help
I
everybody. I
defer-
think.
I yield my time to Mr. Bennett.
Yeah. So John, here's what I will say to you. If you look at the charter, one of the things we did in this charter, which I do in all my charters, I try because I think it's helpful, and this may prove the point that it is helpful. We have annotations. If you look at the annotations, you will see what the latest special acts are. You will see all the special acts that remain in the charter, because there should be virtually no special acts since the late 1950s. Once you started adopting home rule charters, you should have abandoned, and I don't, off the top of my head, recall any special acts that that were adopted recently. But if you look at the annotations, you'll find the special acts. And there really should be virtually no history of special acts since the 1950s. There may be some unusual situations. Maybe the taxing districts have some that I'm not paying attention to. But the annotations will tell you what the special acts are that are still in effect for this charter.
Okay.
So that's an easy way to look into it. And then if you want to look at the special act, I can have corp counsel, or you could look it up on the internet. But that would be it. But as a practical rule, there should be no special acts, and we shouldn't be doing anything by special act, except the taxing districts have got to change their districts by special act.
So that's illuminating. That was informative. So what I'm hearing is that there likely have been no special acts for Norwalk in a half a century or more. And that would make perfect sense, in which case my question would be moot. So I had thought there could have been one, and you're telling me there.
And there might be one out there that I don't know about.
Okay.
But if it doesn't show up in this charter, then I don't know how, and we missed it. I'm not sure what it is or what it would be, what the effect of it would be. It should be, if there were special acts passed before we did this charter revision, they should have been in the charter. They should have been incorporated sometime in the charter with one of your charter revisions. If they're not, somebody missed it somewhere. So
okay. And then my other question is, have there been special acts passed by the legislature for the benefit of other municipalities? And if so, I would like to know, what has been brought to the legislature, when and what for, and whether or not it passed. Again,
that really has nothing to do with what we're doing.
Oh,
doing here.
It has nothing to do with us.
So actually, I have to disagree with you.
Well, it has something to do with you and your education and yourself. That's fine, but not for this body that's sitting here.
I disagree.
Okay.
Respectfully. I think Steve Mednick has made clear that special acts are a way to accomplish things that could not be accomplished in a different way. I'm not saying it's easy.
But it has nothing to do with the
no,
charter.
no.
that we're
That's not
discussing.
what I said.
No.
That's not really what I said.
No.
Okay.
The special acts that exist, I'll give you a great example. I mean, you have one in your charter, you have the ability to control gun regulation in Norwalk. There's not another community in the state that has that authority because there's no general act. Somehow, at some point in 1913 or whenever it was adopted, you had that power. And so I recommended that and others that you retain those powers. But most community, I'll talk to a few other folks, but communities are amending their charters through charter revision, not through special act.
Understood. Yeah.
And I think that the General Assembly would be loath to do that. That doesn't mean there aren't special acts, but they're probably not special acts that are dealing with municipal powers. Now, the way the legislature deals with individual communities, and this is not good government that I'm going to be talking about now. But this is the reality. I have seen legislation developed that one of my communities needed to have a special election because their charter was deficient. We didn't have time to do a charter revision. And so we got the General Assembly to pass a bill that allowed a community between the size of 63,000 and 65,000 in the state of Connecticut to conduct an election on such and such a date. That's special legislation under the guise of general legislation. So that kind of stuff is done, but that's not good government. And good government is amending your charter through a charter revision process. And so I'd be surprised if I found any special acts that are a way of facilitating the operation of any local government.
Right, and I think what we're hoping to accomplish is working within this charter as much as we possibly can to improve it or whatever. I mean, John, are you looking for this information as like a precedent for us to then go forth and do something we couldn't otherwise do, or is it just the sake of curiosity? Or
No, what I'm really trying to understand is what is possible. Okay. That's all.
What is
And-
possible within this charter?
Well,
What
I
is
think
po-
personally, my question about curriculum, sorry about that. What we are trying to achieve here and what we can achieve here. That is my question. Sorry for interjecting, but, looking for, what we are, I understand why we are here, but what we can do.
right, well, and I think something, and Joe, I think we'll kind of get a lot of that after our meeting with the elected officials. I think probably the way to approach this best, and this is what we did last time, is we gather the input from people here and from our elected officials, and we see what we can then do. I mean, I think we want to have the suggestions and our ideas and those of our elected officials driving this, rather than the what is possible and then try to shoehorn stuff into that, right? So I mean, if John, if something comes up and we decided this is something we absolutely need to have in the charter, and this is something that's going to greatly benefit the city of Norwalk, and we aren't able to do that through charter revision, or there's some state law or whatever that prevents us from doing that, okay, then we kind of maybe take a look. But I think it's kind of doing it backwards to say, how crazy can we get here, and what are some things some other communities have done, whether it's legally dubious or not, and then see if we can find ideas that meet that criteria. It just seems like it's the wrong way to do it. I think,
Tyler, that's unfair. I mean,
John, it's not that it's unfair. It's just that I don't know how helpful an exercise it is to look at every one of the other 168 communities in Connecticut and see things they've done through special act, and then see how that pertains to us.
so that wasn't my inquiry. My inquiry was, what other special acts have been done in the state legislature, not what have look at each of the 169 towns, find their history of special acts. No, just find out, is this being done? If it's not being done, as Steve made clear, that Norwalk almost certainly has had no special acts for over half a century. That's clear. That's useful. Okay.
But how is that relevant to the charge of what this commission is?
I think that's a good question, Carl, and this is how I would answer it. I think it's useful for us to look at what other cities and towns have done that has been successful.
In their charters.
In their charter.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
and we've done that, and we did that last time, and we'll do that this time.
Yeah.
Okay. And
We still don't know
gosh,
we still don't know how your request, how the information you're requesting is relevant to our charter.
oh, sure. So the question really is, have any other towns in Connecticut in recent years sought to use special acts to amend their charter in such a way that it would satisfy the needs of the Dillon's rule status of the state?
All right, that's a
So-
very specific question. That's now a very limited search, but I think that Steve can probably answer that question without even looking, right? in terms of like whether or not that's even possible or doable?
I can't guarantee it, Ed, but I can close to guarantee that there's no community that has tried to amend its charter through special act.
And,
in
and, and
recent
this is
times.
where I'm saying the process seems kind of backwards, right?
Okay.
Because we don't have an idea that we're wondering, is this something we can do through charter revision, or is this something that's going to require a special act? Right. So until we get to that point, if we say, for instance, we decide that the thing we absolutely need in Norwalk is ranked choice voting, and everyone comes in and they want ranked choice voting, right? And the only way we can do that is through a special act. Well, then we look into that. But if we don't have anything we're pursuing, I don't see the value in benchmarking ourselves against other communities for something that maybe we can just do through the charter anyway.
I absolutely agree with you.
So let's let the ideas drive it rather than the constraints or lack of constraints.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion we table this conversation?
Sure.
Aye.
We can come, but we can come back to this. I don't know that.
I mean, at the time, you drew a perfect example, I think. If we run up against it, then it's time to discuss this. But at this point, you're right, we're backing into this. It has no relevance to what we're talking about. Right?
We're backing into it, and Carl, and I think you can probably testify to this as we went through this before, is that it you know, when we meet and when we have the meetings and when we're doing the work, it can seem like a bit of a slog, but the time goes incredibly quickly, and
Yes.
April and May comes up on you really quick, and I think we want to, you know, for the sake of efficiency, let's hear from residents and elected officials and others and see what the ideas are. And if something comes up that is going to require a special act, it's going to require research by Steve, then we'll deal with it then. But I have a feeling we can do quite a bit within the bounds of what we're being tasked with and what the charter allows us to do anyway.
Absolutely, as we have
Yeah.
in the past, as has been done in the past. Okay.
Yeah.
I am surprised by the level of fear and consternation.
It's not fear, it's just a
Not
waste
fear.
of Steve's
That-
time.
Okay.
So
Again, you know, other towns do stuff. I'd like to know what they do. And that's okay if I'm on my own.
But John,
and that's-
why though is the question? Who
Oh.
cares what Hamden does if it has no relevance to us?
Correct.
Right? If they're doing something by special act that's not relevant to us, who cares?
Without knowing what Hamden does, I don't really know whether it's relevant to us or not.
Maybe the better way to put this, John, is a special act is something that we can't do under what the state of Connecticut has allowed Norwalk to do on its own, period. So you would need a special act for them to approve something that we have no authority to do. So unless we come up with one of those, it's a moot point,
Correct.
all right? They've
Otherwise,
already gotten the discussion because of the taxing districts, and the answer to what it is, the taxing districts got to go figure it out themselves and ask for special legislation. So unless we come up with something that points us in that direction, that the council says we want to do X, and the answer back from Steve and having us look at it and says you can't do it, then your option is to go get a special, from the
Correct.
state legislature.
Correct.
yeah, and I think
Well, I look at it. That's what I don't want to put, I'm siding with them because not against you or anything. It's just that we got X amount of resources to utilize, and we need to utilize the resources on what the council's going to put on their list next first as a priority. All right, and then what we're putting up as items, and not put an effort into something that is not needed. If it's needed, then we'll ask the question.
John, and I don't want to cut you off because I know you had a couple other things, but Joe has her hands up. So if you have anything else, let's go through it, and then, or otherwise we can go over to Joe.
Yield to others.
Okay, Joe?
Oh, there are so many pieces to what we are discussing, and I'm looking forward to actually, discussing things and, making some, having meaningful conversations. But our next meeting, what are we going to be discussing? What are we trying to achieve? I would like to have an idea of what we are trying to achieve during these meetings, rather than.
So, well, our next meeting on the 19th is with the elected officials. So we will be hearing from them. They'll be offering their thoughts on things that need to change in the charter. And then at the meetings, so at the meeting after that, at our December 3rd meeting, we will, I'll speak with Steve and we'll come up with an agenda where we are addressing specific items.
I do.
And how do you decide on the items? Like what, because I will not be December 3rd, I will actually be on an airplane coming back from Phoenix, Arizona.
Sure.
So I would love to know what we'll be discussing there and subsequently.
May I just ask a very brief question, just to interject, pertinent to the next meeting on the 19th? As I understand it, council leadership will be changing on November 26th. So we're having a meeting with council leadership, with outgoing council leadership on the 19th. Was that intended? Or wouldn't it be more relevant to have a meeting with the new council leadership that will be in leadership 2 weeks later?
Well, I think, Ed, you make a good point, but then that puts it Thanksgiving week.
Right. That's true, but
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
don't know.
I mean,
I don't know if there's anything that would prevent us with meeting from the new leadership.
no,
At a
I had
future-
this discussion with council leaders today, and I said, well, should we just have the next group of leaders join you and have everybody there together? But that's presumptuous because they haven't been. I don't know if they've been selected yet. I think I know who they're going to be, but I don't know if the caucuses have formally acted. So I think that may be part of the issue, Ed. But certainly we should make sure that they're invited soon thereafter at the subsequent meeting. Now, what I just wanted to say that I think at the early meeting in December is the meeting where the body will take a look at the grid and start to lay out the priorities so we can decide what we're going to be doing thereafter. So I think that is the purpose of the first meeting in December, is to actually go through everything that's in the grid, which you'll have before that meeting. So if you're not going to, Joe, if you're not going to be there, hopefully you would have the grid and you might be able to send your comments in or talk to the leadership of the body before the meeting. But that would be the intent, is not to have we wouldn't be laying out and saying, here's the substantive thing we're going to discuss. I think the meeting in December is the meeting where you're going to lay out your initial thoughts on the next few meetings thereafter. Your second meeting in December, then your January meetings. I suspect the heavy work will start in January.
And comment that Tyler made earlier, when we hit January, and this is supposed to be done, I think, May?
right.
It'll go by in a blur.
Yeah.
My apologies, Joe. I didn't mean to step on your next point. I just had a question about that November 19th meeting.
Oh, no
No,
worries.
I think I
Thank you.
agree. Good points by Joe. Basically, you're saying, what's the agenda for the next meeting?
So, well, for the one after we meet with the elected officials, we will use that one. We will use the December 3rd meeting then to kind of lay out the meetings moving forward.
Exactly.
Nothing prohibits anybody from the council or anybody to show up at our next meeting, right? It's still an open meeting, correct?
Yep.
True.
So some other people on the council wanted their voices heard now. They can show
I'll-
up.
I'll talk to
I'm just
leadership.
saying, it's an open meeting. The public
Yeah.
gets to have a say too, so,
Doug, I'll talk to leadership. I think that everybody knows who the next leadership
Yeah.
team is going to be, and simply encourage them to show up at the next meeting, if they can, so that we get that out of the way, so we don't delay another 2 weeks. I'll make a call tomorrow, the next day.
And Stephen, can you email me the PowerPoint? I never got it.
Carl, I'll send it to you. I have it. I think it went out
Okay.
attached. I'll send it to you right now. I was actually just looking at it.
And does everybody on this commission have a copy of the charter that was passed in the last election?
A hard copy?
Yes,
I have a hard copy, yeah.
I would suggest you get one. It's available online. You can download it or whatever you want to do with it, but it'd be
And
helpful.
John made the great suggestion, just having Esther, is that how you pronounce her name? Printed out if you want to go to town hall. I did that, city hall, and she gave it to me.
It kills a lot of trees, but yeah.
You do it double-sided, so It's less trees.
Oh, so it only kills half the trees. Okay.
Idiot Pete.
I have a quick question about the next meeting, the November 19th, when we meet with the officials.
Yeah.
Is there an agenda? Two, are we there to listen? Just in the sake of respecting everyone's time, also Steve's time, because he is not cheap. Is this something for us just to listen and for him to take notes so we understand everyone's concern, or is this going to be like a dialogue? Because I feel like it'd be best if we were to listen and take notes as opposed to going back and forth. Because
So
we could be all night.
Yeah, I think, Tanya, I'll double check to see. I don't have the website open right now, so I'm not sure if the
Okay.
agenda's up yet. But I think kind of what we had discussed at the opening here was we want to at least allow for questions back and forth if they have a point to be made and we needed to clarify it. I mean, I don't know that this is the meeting to be debating issues or things like that. But if to the extent that I don't know that it'll be exactly like our public hearing on the 29th where the members of the public come up, they get their 3 minutes and that's the end of it. I think it would be helpful if it was a little bit more of a free flowing discussion when we speak with them on the 19th.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the appointing authority. Keep in mind, the mayor's not technically, but the council members are your appointing authority. You're going to have to report back to them. And so to the extent that you have questions to clarify what they're saying would be very, very helpful to you, I think.
No, clarifying like
different from
the
the public
questions that they have, but as far as like, and at times like earlier, we kind of go into this back and forth and then go on tangents. I don't feel like that's the best use of everyone's time.
Yeah, I don't think you want to get involved in debate
Yeah.
at this point.
Would agree.
Great point.
And then Steve, you said your the grid, your grid would be completed by the December date. So we can all, if anyone has any questions, we should probably go over the grid before that
Yeah.
meeting.
I'm going to start, I'm under the gun on a couple of deadlines, but I'm going to start working on, I meant to work on the public hearing portion of it last week. I'm going to try to do that in the next few days. And frankly, if I get it done, I'll send it over to you so you'll see at least what the public hearing portion of it looks like to give you a little feel for that, how it distributes through the charter, and then I can do an update. So if I can get that done, I don't want to promise it, but I will try to get you the public hearing portion of it sometime, even before your meeting with the mayor and the council leadership.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. I got your email.
All right. You know what, Carl? I think when it went out before, it was your old email address.
It went to probably the business email.
Okay. All right. Anyone have anything else for this evening? I think that was I don't know if we had anything else on the agenda other than the new business. So anything else for tonight?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'm going to make something. Kidding.
Yeah, that was what we had. So all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Well, Steve, thank you very much, and thank all of you guys. I'm glad we're able to get together tonight and go over some stuff. So I just checked. I don't see the agenda for the 19th yet, so I'll check with Esther in the morning and make sure we have that up. And then I will also confirm. I'm gonna make a note right now. I want to confirm the room. I got the impression that the chambers were going to be available by the 19th, but I'll double check to be sure whatever they were doing for IT stuff is done, so that we're not showing up. And
There are only 9 of us. It should not be that difficult.
yeah, I think
Is the room where the Board of Education meets, was that not available?
I assume we'll be able to make other arrangements. I think we had discussed exactly how many people were going to be there and kind of what size room we would need to accommodate everybody. So we'll have a room. I'll make sure I know what it is and where we'll be so that people show up, they know where to go. All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Right.